Hello, 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 everyone. It is Thursday, and the time is now 12:02 and counting. As you all know, I give myself a grace period every week, but hey, I'm happy to have you. I am your host. My name is Christian Shields, and this is a Ask Christian Shields session. And I am on a mission to bring some normalization to our conversations. So today, I'm really happy to have a special guest today, especially to address the conversation of women, right? And what we tell ourselves, a lot of those personal issues that we have, that I don't really want to give too much away, but for the most part, I'm excited about this conversation today because I know and I love the special guest that we are having. I believe she is a outstanding spokesperson and voice of reasoning for having conversations about women. I'm going to talk about Maria. Then I'm going to tell y'all how we personally met. But I want you all to know today's goal. Today, I just really want to have a conversation to help us really just provide education and personal awareness support to help strengthen and empower us women to take charge of our life. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you all to Maria Owens. Maria Owens was born in Chicago and raised on the south side of Chicago in Inglewood and the Roseland communities. She is a graduate from Loyola University Chicago School of Law, where she has earned her Juris Doctor in 1996. Upon her graduation, she and her partner Chelsea Robinson started the firm of Parkman and Owens, which is now named Owens and Robinson. The firm is the legal consultant for the Judge Mathis Show, which is a nationally court televised show. She is also a author of a book called Combustion and has written several other essays and plays. She is an avid lover of Christ and an active member in her community. She has served on a host of boards and supports several missions and educational efforts of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. Miss Owens also has Miss Owens also is married of 35 years to her wonderful husband, Robert, and has two gifted children, Robert and Renee, which I love. And also, she has five awesome grandchildren. So, without further ado, I want to bring Miss Owens in to begin this conversation today. And let's welcome her today.
Hi.
Hello, hello. How are you?
Amazing. How are you?
I am wonderful. So, um, we here at the Ask Christian sessions have been having great conversation about mindset, faith, ministry, business. We kind of cover bases in a lot of different areas just because we all are multi-layered. We are not all just one thing. And I think it's important that we start having conversations about things that really affect us. And so I invited you in today to have, add a piece of that conversation in for us. So Maria, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I am glad. So, is there? Tell us a little bit about yourself because you got bios, but you also have what's going on. What's up with Maria right now?
What's going on with Maria right now is I am trying to lose my quarantine 15.
Woo.
And and I have tried to do the best I could under these circumstances to continue the cause of social justice, to continue projecting my Christian faith, and especially trying to be a beacon for those who don't have a voice. And so that cannot stop just because the devil wanted to intrude upon our mission. So at this time, I'm really just trying to get back to a new normal, being mindful of those around me, caring about those who are who are more vulnerable, and trying to be, mindful of the conditions while still proceeding with what we need to do.
Okay, so you said a whole mouthful, which I think I kind of want to start and pull from some of that. So when you saying, starting to be mindful right now, when you think about women and just your experience in this quarantine, what do you think one of the top things are that you've had to be mindful about right
I
now?
think I think self-care. I think women have a particular problem with self-care. We're worried about, like, I personally, I'm concerned about my 85-year-old father, who I'm trying to, be there for. Your children who are still, paramount. I don't care how old your children get. You're still going to think of them as you did when they were first born. You're concerned about them. You're concerned about your own household finances to make sure that you're, responsible to your own commitments that you've made. And then, you have to be thinking about, every time I go out, am I risking someone else's life because I want to go out to the store or to the, whatever entities. And you just want to be mindful of the world around you, because it's just not, we are not where we were a year ago today.
Right. And I honestly don't think that we will ever be where we were moving forward in any way, because there's so many different emotions that have happened right now. And I know just being a woman, okay, just being honest, like this time has really allowed us to really realize, like, what are we doing, right? Like, and why are we doing this? And I think for women, it's different for us because we hold that place of having to be strong. We hold that place of having to kind of bite our tongue sometimes in relationships, in friendships. And it's kind of like, where do we start in having conversations that didn't used to be a problem, but now are, because we've had time to think.
Right.
So what do we do with that?
Right. And so when you think about what your commitments are and prioritizing what is expected of you, when you think about the fact that you can't do anything if you're dead, you can't do anything if you're sick, you can't do anything if you're laid up, and I'm not even talking about COVID. I'm just talking about everyday life. If you overstretch yourself to the beyond the boundaries of what's reasonable, can you really be effective in all the things that you know you need to do? The answer is a big fat no. So more so even now, we have to be very, very cautious and very, very critical of not doing those things that are going to keep us safe.
Yeah, I hear you. That's but what's safe?
Well, the thing is that we don't know, because the experts don't even know what they don't know. But what we can do is what we must do. And what you know about is what you can do. Even if you wear a mask everywhere you go, it's still only 51% effective by the most generous estimates, but it's better than zero. And even if you wash your hands and make sure you keep yourself clean, it's only effective to a certain degree. So what you can do, you can do. But what you can do is you can get proper sleep, you can eat right, you can get the right amount of exercise. That's something that makes sense no matter what's going on. So what I'm talking about is some common sense things we can do to limit and as it relates to the coronavirus, limit your exposure and exposure to other people. And then you got to worry about your mental health, because there's a lot I don't like to agree with everything she says, but one thing she says I do agree with on The View, when Megan says there's a lot of ways to die, and corona is not the only way you can die. A lot of people's mental states are really jeopardized right now because, again, we're not doing self-care. We're not making sure that we do things that are going to take care of not just our physical selves, but our emotional selves and our mental selves. So there's a lot of components that come to things that are not that's specific to women, specific
And
to the things we take on ourselves.
and that's what I want to talk about. Because I know it's a lot of conversation about coronavirus right now. And honestly, right now, I want to talk more about the issues that happened before coronavirus. Because you have people that are going through divorces in the midst of this. You got custody battles. You have people who, women that were already at their breaking point prior to this. And so I feel like we shouldn't use this time to focus on other things, and as if what we had going on first didn't matter.
That's
So
right.
like, so for you, with you being a consultant on the Judge Mathis show, so you see a lot, you hear a lot, like you've heard conversations where women have came up and tried to defend themselves or have conversations about something. What are some of those highlighted moments that us as women miss, that that causes us not to be able to support ourselves the way that we can?
Okay, so again, I go back to the theme I brought up: self-care, self-preservation. We do not think about what is important to maintain ourselves. Let's talk about just plain finances. We are so quick to jeopardize our own financial security because we are afraid to jeopardize a relationship. So long after you've committed to pay for that motorcycle for Jimmy Lee, he's gone, motorcycle's gone, but the bill is still there in your pocket. And we have to think about what makes sense for our long term. I like to say, if you're not my husband, you can't get along. What you mean? I'm supposed to marry you? I'm gonna go with yes, if that's if I want to marry you. So no, you can't get along. I'm also a firm believer in if a bank won't give you the money, neither will I, because there's a reason that they have those standards in place because of your credit worthiness. And if you won't pay them back, I know you're not gonna pay me back because you're going to feel like, well, we're in a relationship. So we have to think about the long term. Now, we talk about emotional health. People feel the need to be in unhealthy relationships because they think that, it's if they just love the person enough, then they'll come around to being what they need them to be. Now, these are things that women do because for some reason life has taught us that we can fix these sorts of things. Not true.
So it's almost like we living off the idea of potential in people, right? In a way, because I also see that too, not just in relationships when it's just a man and a woman or whatever your choice is. I'm talking about in friendships too. We don't use our voices. We don't address when someone says or does something that is against us. So in my mind, I sometimes am still trying to understand why do we choose not to speak up for ourselves? Like I just want to know, what have you heard?
Well, this is the thing about that. We tend to feel that if we speak up, we're being bossy, we're being shady, we're being messy because society has taught us that when we assert ourselves, we are somehow have a negative connotation. Whereas when a man asserts himself, he's being aggressive, he's being forceful, he's being, they have a lot of more positive words for them being stepping up. When we step up, we're being witchy, we're being messy, we're being, petty. But it really is about, again, asserting ourselves in a way that's healthy for us. If you sit there and let those things fester, what happens to those relationships ultimately? One of them will result to become resentful to the other. One of them may become an user to the other one because they've been allowed over time. What time has taught them is that's the nature of our relationship. If you want me to be your girl, then you understand there's certain things that I require of you that may not be healthy for you. Maybe I get to dump all my stuff on you, but you can't. I'm not there when you need to release. Or I can come to you for finances, resources, time, whatever. But when it's your turn to need it, it's understood that you're not requiring that of me. We do that all the time, not just with romantic relationships, even family relationships. And at some point, you have to learn how to turn. Some people learn the word no, and it's hard.
Uh-uh. Not my cousins.
It's
Not
really hard.
not my cousins and my sisters who are just so over enmeshed. And I'm saying that because we allow our family sometimes to keep us back. We don't check them, even when they are doing things that we know is wrong. And I'm not here to say right or wrong because sometimes I have to be careful with those words. But I'm saying, and somewhere in there, there's this moral compass that should be like, yo, if I wouldn't be okay with that done to me, I can't be okay watching it happen to somebody else. And I think that it's addressing that because I've seen and been in situations where not stepping up and speaking up, even for other women, and having other women's back, can lead to other women hating themselves. And so that
Hurting
brings the
themselves.
question out when men ask, like, why do you why women hate themselves, they're bitter. You can't say nothing to them, you can't talk to them, and then you have the whole, women, I don't like other women, I don't they just rub me the wrong way, like women just do too much. So when I think about that concept, I mean, what do you think evolves that, what keeps that going, and or how can we change that narrative?
The only thing we can change the narrative with is love, and that's been my mantra since this whole thing started. We have to love each other. When it comes down to relationships with other human beings, citizens of Earth, I'll call it. I like to call it citizens of Earth. We have to treat each other in a way um, that promotes unity and promotes health. When we speak to people, just you know, I noticed just even with little kids, their play is mean now. It's like they're not mad at each other, but even the play is mean. The way they joke around is it's got a mean edge to it. So this is how it has evolved over time. That's fun. We used to call it playing the dozens back in the day, right? You all kind of sig on each other, and then you laugh it all off. But that's taken to a whole new level now. It's like that's how people communicate, and profanity is just like, you know, I hear little kids cursing in front of their parents now, like with reckless abandon. It's not only is it cute, it's a non thing. So it's just we've gotten more and more mean in our dialogue with each other, and I think that translates into actions.
And I think, honestly, love is a challenge. And the reality is, it is for people, because depending on your background, depending on, your experiences, your traditions, even your spirituality, like, and your intelligence, like, we kind of have an ability to craft things the way that we want them to go within our favor. So if it's safer for us to not have this conversation, and that means I don't have to love or express or say I'm sorry or forgive, if as long as I got another person who understands my reasoning, I can stay in this spot for a long time. So when you say like love being an answer, like I just get concerned sometimes, because what is love? And I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for people who really don't understand. Like, okay, what is that? And how do I know I have it?
And I hate that in English we really only have one word that means it, because in other languages they have many words that can precisely define it. But I'm talking about that, not just the emotion, but the action of it. If I see a child fall and hurt themselves, I look around and I don't see an adult anywhere, do I step over that child and say, oh, well, they should have been out here by themselves? Or do I say, sweetheart, are you okay? That's really a love that's in yourself. I love myself enough to care about other citizens of Earth. I care enough about the community around me to know that when everybody around me is doing well, that helps me to do well. It's part of self-preservation. If you have a job and you have security, perhaps you won't be breaking down my door to come steal things out of my house. If you have health and you're doing well, to put it back in Corona language, maybe you can't infect me. If you are able to eat because we have a good store, we're selling good food, then I'm eating too because the store is serving me. So we have to care about the things that help and hurt the people around us, because ultimately everything that happens to the people around us will happen to us in one way or another, whether it's the exact same thing or the direct result of that thing to the other person. And that's what I'm talking about. Love means not just how things affect me directly, but I care what happens to you.
Hmm. But in order for that to happen, you basically have to have a better care for yourself in order to have a better care for others,
I would
right?
say so.
Hmm.
I would say so.
I can see how that can correlate. So does that mean also that people that don't have a greater love or care for themselves will most likely not have a positive love and care for others? So they would be mean and nasty and rude.
Well, I'll say this. What makes a man with a gun shoot up a block that they can physically see young children standing on and not care if one of those bullets might strike a 24-year-old child, a 20-month child? What makes you shoot at a dog while a child is there in the range of your gun? What made you shoot on a block where stray bullet could hit a 13-year-old girl dancing, showing dance moves to her mother in the living room? So the mentality is you don't care for yourself, so you don't care about anything around you. And that's the spill out of that. So yes, I do think that.
I'm with it. I support it wholeheartedly. And I think that if we could kind of provide some support to help strengthen someone that may be in that place or have that mindset, what would you offer to them?
Well, okay, first of all, I can't help it. I'm a Christian. I'm gonna offer you Christ. That's number one.
Right on.
You shouldn't ask the question. Number two, I'm going to say that this problem did not evolve in a weekend, and it's not going to be cured in a weekend. This is centuries of oppression, segregation, injustice that have welled up into a place that is spilling over in a way. Everybody wants to put band-aids on it and do cookie cutter answers. You're going to have to give people hope, because if I have a hope for a future, I'm not going to want to jeopardize that future by doing something stupid. But what does that mean? What does hope for a future mean? Well, when I look around and I see some communities having A plus education in their schools, and I'm living in the same city, why is my school? Why are you worried about whether your school has a better football field when my bathrooms in my schools are falling apart? And why is the system funding you to have a football field when it tells my principal we can't afford to fix your bathroom? You see what I'm saying?
Pull
So
it, pull it home.
when you have inequities like that, you have to deal with those things so that you can reach the people. How did Jesus deal with things? He didn't just start preaching. He first started out with, "You need some bread, you need some fish, I got you." So then, when your belly was full, then you were more likely to listen. But when you telling me what I need, and you need to stop doing this, and you need to stop doing that, but you're not putting anything in its place, I'm like, bump, 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 bump.
Oh man. Okay, I'm not trying to pivot too quick. Okay, but those are some great examples, and so it makes me want to know, like, what has helped you get to where you are, and like in thinking, what has helped you to get to this place of being able to be a voice of reasoning and create balance around how you engage with other people, and like just developing as a woman, period.
Okay, first of all, 55 years. That was number one. Second of all, being present in your life, because we have a tendency to just go through, just kind of just get through things, get through each episode to the next episode without really taking away the lesson from the episode itself. And sometimes
Ooh.
you got to live in that moment, because if you don't live in that moment, for good or for bad, you miss the lesson. And most of the time, especially when I'm in my gravest, I'm like, okay, God, what am I supposed to be learning from this? And I physically ask that question because while I'm in the middle of something, I can only feel the hurt, and I don't always see what good is supposed to come out of this. And sometimes no good per se is supposed to come out of it. I'm just supposed to learn something. Those are the hardest ones because they seem so unfair. But when you look at it, you have the perspective, and that's why I brought up the 55 years. When you have the perspective of decades to look back, you can kind of see how these things string together, like, oh, that's why I had to go through that. So you have to just sometimes be happy with knowing that you don't get the resolution of knowing why you're going through it at that moment. Just tuck it away and pull it out later when it becomes, oh, that's why I had to do this specific thing. Now I'm gonna put that piece in the puzzle right here, and now I needed that. Whoo! If I didn't go through that, I would have never been able to deal with blah 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 blah. So the perspective comes from really taking the time to learn a life lesson and surrounding yourself with people who can help you draw those lessons out. Because a lot of times your friends don't mean you any good, and they don't mean to not do you any good, but
Mhm.
their advice and their support doesn't always help you through the situation the way you could otherwise learn.
Mm. And I think with me, um, I'm glad you referenced time, and time according to like your age, because one thing that I do understand is that it does take time to get to a certain mindset, but you also have to want to get to a certain mindset. And I'm reminded about a publication that Oprah wrote back in 2014. And she basically listed out 20 questions that every woman should ask herself. So some of the questions were big, some of the questions were small, some of them are hard. However, they range all over. And one of the first questions that were on that list were, do I examine my life enough? And I want to live up to our title today, what women don't know. And the question here is, do I examine my life enough? Enough to know that we don't know everything, enough to know that it is not about being right all the time, enough with knowing that it's not about being perfect or keeping ourselves in places to prevent from other people um, putting us on pedestals, because we can't control other people. But when you think about that question, do I examine my life enough? What comes to your mind?
Well, one of the things that I would like for you to add to that list is I can't fix everything, because
Yes.
everything doesn't need to be fixed. Some things just have to play out.
Yes.
As a parent, especially young, when I had smaller children, I didn't want them to feel the pain of their consequences all the time. So sometimes I swooped in when I shouldn't have to kind of make things better. Sometimes you gotta let them feel the consequences, because if they don't feel the consequences, they don't learn don't learn a lesson from that episode. So you have to be mindful. And you're talking about your girlfriends. They're the main ones. You want to be there for them. You want to make everything okay. And oh my God, but you cannot. Sometimes you got to let her fall on her butt, because if she doesn't, and she doesn't feel the pain of that, then the impact of that lesson will be degraded. So that the next time that choice that they have to exercise that wisdom comes up, well, yeah, my girls got me, or just I didn't feel the pain of it, so it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It was that bad.
It
But
was bad.
people swooped in, and you didn't feel it. But if you feel it, you know what? I don't want that again. And that's what you need. You need to learn so that you can be a better person for the next person. Girl, let me tell you, I bop, 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 and I did dot, 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 dot. And then that person may be able to be saved from what it is you went through.
I think that is important. It was something that you said that really stood out to me, because um, you got to be willing to tell them the truth. And I think that's something that women, we don't do as often. Some people are fortunate to have women in your life that's going to call you on your stuff. And I think that we have to develop, and strengthen ourselves to be able to tell your friend, mama, sister, no, X, Y, and Z, to help guide each other's level of thinking. Um, because honestly, one of the bigger questions for me is, by doing that, it doesn't mean that you're caring too much about what other people think. By telling somebody to be honest and tell the truth, it's not taking away from you being able to separate your thoughts from what another person may think of you. And I think sometimes that kind of holds women back from being straightforward with other people. Um, so when we come from that angle, I think one of the things that we also want to be able to ask ourselves is, what are the personal deal breakers for us as women? And so I want to kind of turn into you a little bit, Maria, because when we think about, you talked a lot about self care, and we talked about how we can re enter into relationships and what we can do. My question is, how do we as women identify those red flags that we keep overlooking, right? Like, and I'm gonna call them deal breakers, red flags, however people want to identify them as. How do we know if they're red flags or not?
So I'm going to give you three main points. One of them is, if there's anybody in your life, and I mean anybody, children, parents, anybody in your life that has to make you feel less than to make themselves feel better than, that's not even a gradual dismissal. They're gone, because that's going to be toxic, and it's only going to get worse. Number two, if you find yourself feeling that you have to change who the core of you are, and I'm not talking about bad habits, but the core of who you are in order to please somebody else, they got to go, because that's going to destroy you. It's going to destroy you. Number two, if you find that the person in your life, whether it's again family, whatever, cannot be there to support the worst of you,
Mm.
and they're only there for the part that benefits them, the good parts of you, the parts that they like, then they mean you no good. Because we're all multifaceted. None of us are all good or all bad. But if there's a person who cannot deal with the worst part of you, then they mean you no good. And, it's probably time to say bye.
Yeah. And I think too, I think that's a great place to kind of start pulling back in. And I want to leave us women with a final thought. Um, and that is, how do you want to be remembered? Because the reality is, people come into your life and people exit your life for a number of reasons. But you have to be confident in who you are as a woman and what your moral compass is and what you want your human experience to be. And you have to live that oath wholeheartedly and honestly. And so I just want to make sure that we understand that today's conversation was really just bringing awareness to what personal issues impact us as women. And remember, we can go on and on because, you know, we can talk more about what affects us as women. But before we go, Maria, do you have any last words or anything that you like to share?
Well, we didn't talk a lot about legal stuff, but I just want to say this, that always do your research before you get into any next life transition transforming thing. Right now, a lot of people are thinking back. They're being reflexive. This is causing them to think about where their life is. But before you make any change, put people around you who know about what it is you want to do, who are supportive of you, to the when you talk about people who are going to actually help you facilitate these things. But make sure that you know what you're doing, because you can make a big change in your life and the lives of the people around you. And if being forewarned is being forearmed. And I think that if you want to make a great change in your life, this is a great time to do it. But be ready, arm yourself with information, and go forward. Do what you want. Make your passion. This, if anything we've learned, is life is short, and do what you're passionate about. The money will follow.
Yeah, I think that is great. And Maria, if someone wants to continue conversations about legal things, can you kind of just touch on which legal things you focus on?
We do at Owens and Robinson. We do primarily criminal defense and family law. That's divorce, child support. We also do contracts, real estate transactions, personal injury, and bankruptcy. And you can always find us at owensandrobinson.com. That's Owens, the letter N, Robinson.com. Or you can call us at 312 217 4222, and I'd be happy to talk to you further.
Okay. And I know you already did the end part about I know you already talked to me because we didn't talk about legal as much. Conversation kind of went someplace else. But I do want to take just maybe like 2 more minutes or so to kind of hit on some of those legal issues and not just graze over it. What don't women know right now?
Well, um, most of the times, with these stops, we're talking about the George Floyd situations. Basically, I would say that you want to always, whenever you encounter police, be very careful. We're addressing a lot of things right now, but you want to make sure that, even as a woman, that you try to be cooperative as best you can. You can even ask them, do you have a body cam on right now? Is there a dash cam playing right now? Be forthright. Speak out what I'm complying. They ask you, can I have your driver's license? I'm complying. I'm getting you my driver's license. If it's in a place that you may have to reach and they can perceive it fearfully, say, I must reach into this area to get it. Is it okay if I reach in my purse? If it's okay if I go in my console? Make sure you speak those things out loud, because they use those things as reasons for their violence. I want you to know that even resisting an unlawful arrest is illegal. So even if they're not legally arresting you, it's still unlawful to resist. So just I speak those things out. I'm not resisting. I am, because they'll holler out, stop resisting. Like, I'm not resisting. I'm complying. I'm placing my hands behind my, you speak just like they're speaking those things out. You speak those things out too, because unfortunately, we're not where we ought to be with the interaction of law enforcement and people of color. And so protect yourself as best you can by trying to cooperate. And then you can always write them up later. You don't have to get your words in right then. You can always write them up later for what they're doing improperly.
That's good information to have. Can you also kind of touch on the area of divorce right now?
So a lot of people want to do that. I have a client right now who's wants to buy a house while they're in the middle of a divorce. Do not buy new properties while you're in the middle of divorce. That is marital property. Well, it's in my name. No, you don't have, your paycheck is not yours. Paychecks are marital property. Well, I'm paying for it with my money. No, you're paying it with the marital money. Everything that's in the pot. When you get married, the law creates a fiction. You are now one. So one of you cannot do something that's your own while you're married. Both of everything that you have is each other's. So if you are contemplating a divorce, or if you're in the middle of a divorce, but you think you might want to get back together, some people will just do a legal separation. Basically, what that does is, from the point that you're legally separated to the time you reconcile, anything you do financially is considered separate property. So that if you do ultimately get a divorce, that stuff won't be held against you when you tabulate the marital assets. But I would say, I would just, if I was going to get a divorce, I would just be clean, get that done, and then anything I wanted to go on in my life and do. But if there was something that just had to happen right now, you had to address it right now. You want to get the legal separation so that you can separate your assets from the marital assets from that point forward.
Mm. Okay. Are there any other like subjects or areas that that you were like consulting on frequently right now? Um, that you want to offer any last thoughts about?
Just cherish your children, teach them about right and wrong, because society is never going to love them like you love them.
Yeah.
And once they become part of the legal system, this is not a just system in this country. So you don't ever want the law to be doing your parenting for you. Make sure that you get in their head so that you can be there for them, because once the system gets a hold of them, there's no equity. So you can be scarred for life for one dumb decision.
Now, what are some of those decisions that you see women making right now that don't go in their favor?
Well, for one thing, you hear that you can be, your mother always said, be careful who you hang around. There are a lot of women sitting in jail right now for their boyfriend because they got themselves into questionable circumstances and they were left holding the bag. So, if it stinks, if it smells bad, you should stay away from it. Somebody's doing questionable behavior in your home, you got to nip it in the bud right then and there. No one should be able to hold illegal items in your house. No one should be able to use your car to do questionable activities, because that can come back and bite you. And so you want to be careful that you are, not just acquiescing to things that can ultimately cost you your liberty.
Hmm. Is there anything else?
I would say that, since I got some more time, baby mama drama in the state of Illinois. In the state of Illinois, a woman can be arrested for violating child visitation, or we call parenting now. We call it parenting time with the non-custodial parent. So you might be mad at him and you want to punish him by keeping the child away from him, but you can go to jail and even lose custody. So you want to be careful of being petty Betty when it comes to your child and that deadbeat guy.
Hmm. I know you got something else in you.
Well, I mean, if I got more time,
Yeah,
um,
because here's what I want. I really want to live up to what women don't know. Because a lot of times we make decisions in our emotional state, but that decision is usually not just that decision. You know what I mean? That decision is so much more.
So, financially, I would just say that, you want to make sure that you don't entangle your finances. And again, this is not just a romantic relationship, but don't entangle your finances with someone who is not trustworthy and creditworthy. A lot of times you go into business on an emotional thing with somebody, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member. Have a plan in place. Like I stated earlier, I kind of glossed over it, but you should have a firm business plan that you plan to live by before you go in. And you need to do the research, the numbers that back up that business plan. What are your competitors? What are the barriers to entry? How much will it really cost you each year until you become profitable? Is the personality of the person that you're going into business with similar to yours? Are they a spendthrift or are they just a waster? How will that affect your relationship with one another? Does that person have a head for numbers or a head for business? Or are they just the front guy? They like the fun part of the business, the promotion. Not a problem as long as you delineate what your jobs are. So if you're that gregarious out front person, know that you don't have your hands on the money. I'll take care of the money. If I'm that person, I need to say, okay, you know what? I'm the front person. I'm the one who's going to drum up the business. You're the one who's going to handle books. Have detailed plans for how you all are going to orchestrate this business. Make sure that you all have the same or at least compatible ideas of how money is to be spent by the business. I think it's a time to expand. No, I think it's a time to save. And that could be a big problem. Maybe there's a window of opportunity you have that one of you just doesn't see, or maybe there's a time that we need to be thrifty and the other person doesn't see it, and you all need to understand and have a way to work those things out. Have a viable buyout program built in. So if you need to part company, have a way to wind down the business that's pre-set out, so that when it comes to that point, or if it ever comes to that point, you're not caught up in court trying to figure out how this is going to break up. Think about that on the front end. It's not pleasant because you're kind of thinking about the worst thing that can happen, but you need to think about these things as they go on. Maybe somebody might die. Maybe their family might come in and swoop in, and you need to have a way to deal with that. So these are types of things you need to think about on the front end, so that as you transform into this new part of your life, you're not just all rushing in on emotion and excitement, but that there's some very serious thought that's gone into
This is the good stuff.
it.
Like for real, Um, this is good. And that is in regards to business, right? Like you're talking about business dealings.
Yeah.
Okay. What other areas have you identified that are a little bit sticky, that women haven't paid attention to?
So if I'm going to go back to the family piece.
Okay.
Um, a lot, and this is more like the women in like my grandmother's era, but I still see a uncomfortable amount of it in this era. Women are afraid to kind of like be involved in the family finances, and I'm always amazed that young women are still doing this. Well, I don't really know how much he makes. He takes his check and put it in the drawer. I'm like, what? What is this you speak of? No, no. You need to know everything: the gas bill, the light bill, how much he's paying, how much he's making. Well, he just gives me an allowance. No. You all have regular conversations about the family finances. He has a heart attack on. I mean, even if he's a stand-up guy, he has a heart attack on the job. You have no idea. You don't know what the insurance papers are. You don't nothing. No, that's not how this works. What you're doing is you're a partnership. You're the biggest partnership out there because you got to run a whole family for decades. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit down and have regular conversations about the money, how it's spent, how we're going to save, how we're going to use it in the future. So what happens if something happens to one of us? What happens if something happens to both of us? What are our plans in the short term? What are our plans in the long term as a family? Do we want to start investing in things? These are things that every woman needs to know. And I'm just still shocked that in 2020, you have a lot of women that are like, well, he takes care of everything and he's a good man. He might be, but no.
But you ain't got no information, sis. You ain't got nothing, sis. All you got is his word, and when he dead, he can't talk. So that's just my philosophy. That's what I think.
That's
I
deep.
have So that also brings me to the point sometimes with verbal agreements. You know, what have you seen with that? How does that work in people's favor?
Well, I could trust her because we've been together for a long time as friends and we went to kindergarten together and I know she would never ever go back on her word. So her word is her bond until it's not. And then what do you have to prove that anybody said or agreed to anything? Now, under most states, there's where we have the statute of frauds. I mean, there's certain transactions that cannot be verbal. For instance, I can't sell you my house and say we're going to handshake. It has to be in writing. But for
Mm.
those transactions that are just verbal, like a car, oh, girl, this whole thing in the back, girl, you can have it. You can have that car. I don't even mess with that car. Then all of a sudden, it was sold. When we fall out, she was supposed to give me $500 for that car, and she said it in the back. She wrote it on this napkin, and here's the napkin right here. Or I so and so was in the room, and they heard us say that she gonna give it to me on Friday. Prove it. So we want any transaction. You don't want it to be a wink and a handshake. Because even if you do agree, I might have thought you said Thursday. You might have said Friday. Who said we meant the same thing when we entered into agreement? The only way we can know what both of us meant if it's written down.
Oh, that makes sense. We didn't mean the same thing. So therefore,
It's called a meeting of the minds.
it's called what?
A meeting of the minds. I can approve there was a meeting of the minds. I
Mm.
wanted to sell you the red car all the time. You were talking about the blue car. We were talking at the same time. We honestly thought we were talking about the same thing, but we weren't. If it's not written down, who's to say who was right or either of us was right?
So that also brings me to the place of like sometimes you hear where, um, especially in business, you see this a lot. People making emotional purchases or entering into emotional contracts with hopes that whoever they're doing business with is like the magic piece of their business. And so they'll have these large $5,000 payments into these consultants, but don't fully understand what type of service or business that person is providing them. What are your thoughts about that?
Just had that come up with a friend. So she had me look over a consulting contract. And the person promised all these flowery things and then sent the contract. So then when I went through it, I was like, okay, you understand that this means that, and this means this, and this means that. No, they said they were going to do this, that, the third. No, contract says this is not promised, this is not promised, this is not promised. But they promised this. Yeah, they might have promised it when they talked to you, but when they wrote it down, they said don't trust that. So you got to be real careful.
Should we just trust our intuition if it's like a little iffy or it sounds too good? Like, what's something that we can kind of do a temperature check, check our minds in the moment?
The only thing I can tell you is if it's not on the paper, it doesn't exist. And that's just the bottom line. If they say they're going to do it, they ought to be willing to write it down. And if they're not willing to write it down and you can live with that, then fine. If that's money you can afford never to see again and you're okay with that, great. But if you care, it needs to be on the paper.
Mm, that makes sense. And is there any like, so for example, when it comes to contracts, is there a certain way that contracts have to be? Like, will Google Forms or like what is usually thrown out? Like what suffice?
This is the only thing I can tell you is everybody, if everybody could be a lawyer, everybody would be a lawyer. You're not going to think of every contingency, but
Mm,
you want to have somebody in place whose job it is to think about every contingency. One size fits all is not going to fit. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be okay with those forms, but it's that 10th time that can really bite you in the butt. So what I would say is just make sure that anything you think should be there, should happen. Don't count on it happening that way just because you have a relationship with someone. Because they may be thinking, well, she wouldn't want me to do this. She would make me do this. Just like you're thinking, oh, she would do this or he would do this
mm.
because of our relationship. If it's not on the paper, it doesn't exist. If you care, then it needs to be on the paper. If you don't care, if it's like, well, it'd be nice if they do it, but I'm okay if they don't, then fine. But if it's a deal breaker, I need this thing done. If it's not on the paper, don't ask for it to be done. It won't be.
And then the benefit of the doubt too. I think that a lot of people give others the benefit of the doubt. I guess I could just say this, that I recommend not giving people the benefit of the doubt. I recommend asking questions if they come to your mind and not answering them yourself. If it seems like it's something that you're uncertain about, ask. And don't feel like you're obligated to do any business with anybody. And that goes for, I don't care what your track record is. I don't care how you look on Facebook. I don't care, because the reality is, unless you know for sure and you've done your research about something, don't do it.
Yeah, and there's also an adage: don't pay for it until you get it either. You pay for this stuff up front, and you never see them again.
That's a whole nother issue for me, because that's a whole nother issue, period. Because you have a lot of small businesses and that's the way that they do business. So for example, they'll bring you into their system where you'll schedule an appointment with them. The appointment may be far off. Then they'll have you sign a contract. Then they'll have you make a pay. Then they'll have you make a payment. You'll be on their schedule and they got your money, but you don't know if that person's going to die in between now and then. You don't know what's going to happen with that person. And so I feel like that's a poor business practice that a lot of small businesses have right now.
Right. So, okay. So the idea is, they ask for a deposit, and that's fine. I wouldn't pay with a check. I wouldn't pay with cash. I'll pay with a credit card or debit card, because you can't dispute it when you do that. Once you let a check go out there, once you pay cash, it's gone. It's just gone. And you can take them to court for breach of contract. Probably cost you more to fight it than it would be the money that you put up there, and that's what they're counting on. But I would pay with a credit card or debit. If they say we don't take credit card or debit, oh well, then you can't have my business.
Yeah. I think that's important, and that brings us to consumer laws a little bit, like knowing your rights, and like for anybody, not just as a woman, for anybody, what are the laws that protect you from these businesses? I think take out some time and how you can find out how you can help yourself. It's
So
very, very
each
important. Go
state is
ahead.
different. Each state is different. So you want to just see what the laws are. There's different laws with respect to whether they come door to door to you, whether you call them in. Most of the time, you have, if it's a sale, like a door to door type of sale, you have 3 days to cancel without penalty.
Mhm.
Um, but if you solicit them, a lot of times the laws are a little different. So you just need to research what that is. But at the end of the day, the main thing is to ask the questions. If they seem annoyed because you're asking questions, or if they say, oh, don't worry about writing that down, we have understanding, then you don't do it, because a lot of these are very expensive contracts, very expensive deals, and you don't want to tie up your money with someone who's disreputable, and then you're not in a place to deal with that loss.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think that's very important, and I would just encourage people, like, moving forward. If you feel from this conversation that there's some things that you need to be doing differently, I recommend that you implement some new practices that are going to protect your business, and also provide some relief for those you may be doing business with. And this includes not, I hate to say this, but I'm gonna say it because I realize that this includes that statement that every idea that you have does not mean it's a good idea. Like, understand the operations of it, understand what system you're going to put in place behind that, understand the many different parts that you need, because when you go into business, it's never you're just doing business. It's never just a transaction. You have so many different parts that is a part of business, and it's important that you have that stuff set up, like Maria was saying. Get clear before you decide you want to go into business. It is always a bad idea to just go off of a idea.
And you have to be very mindful of the laws. There's a lot of reasons why businesses fail that don't have anything to do with the business itself.
Mm,
There's certifications you need that can be a barrier. There's require insurances that you need, that redlining may affect your ability to get. They may be discriminating against your area where you live or your skin, and you can't get those things. And
Yeah.
you have a lot of businesses operating illegally, trying to sidestep these things, and then once they get found out, they get quite a big bite in the butt. So you want to make sure that you've spoken to people who are already doing what it is. When I opened my firm back in '96, we sat down with a bunch of different people. We sat down with people, lawyers from large law firms, small law firms, solo practitioners, and we got a bunch of different advice. And then we built up a mentor base so that we could go. I went to them for, various briefs. Or how do I draft this? How do I draft this? And they would send me these things, and you build yourself a support system. It's particularly if you're going into something that's brand new for you. And I wouldn't even suggest breaking something that's just brand new.
That
You want
part.
you want to get into something that you know something about. Um, Volunteer with, if it's brand new for you, volunteer with somebody who's doing it for a while. And I know you're like, well, why would I work for free? It's not free. You're getting something. You're getting experience. So you want to work with somebody who's doing what it is you want to do. Go. Each state has, and I don't know, they all don't always call it the same, but it's Work Improvement Act, WIA, or I think they call it now Workforce um, Improvement and Opportunity Act or something like that. But it's a state entity, and they train you for free, and they give you certifications for free in like IT, HVAC, and all types of things. So you can get this free certification and then go out on your own. So you should investigate things like that before you jump out there, because just because an entity or industry is a big money making industry doesn't mean it's a good business opportunity for you.
Yes. I don't think I should say anything on the back end of that. I think that even though I want to so bad, because I think that we have to be more mindful of how we make decisions and what we decide to enter into. And I think you raised a great point of, just because something industry looks like it's booming, you don't try to make a weakness a strength in order to make something work. Like, the reality is, you do need skills, you do need certifications, you do need to know what you're doing, because you're dealing with other people. And if you're doing business, then it's money involved, and that money affects a person's household. And so I think that, I also believe that we need to see more skilled uh, businesses, like in small businesses, not just, this is no shade for people. If you feel that way, I can't help how you take this. But I also think that we need to see more people that are lawyers. We do need to see more people that are doctors. We need to see more people that are in the mental health field. And I'm not knocking the mom and pop shops. I'm not knocking t-shirts or cup making. Like, I'm not knocking any of that. But I'm saying is, eventually we are going to have some skilled people that know about those different areas that do affect us. And we're going to need more of those than other things. So that's just my take on it. That's what I believe and feel, and I would love to see that actually to start happening. I would love to see it start happening. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think this was great conversation today. Just great dialogue. I still believe that some of these conversations are happening in our homes. They're happening, but it's up to us to really make sure that we are listening and taking the appropriate action to help support ourselves moving forward. And so, with that being said, because we are going over time, so it's okay. You got people coming in now. It's all good. No worries. Tell them we wrapping up. But um, are there any? Do you have any last thoughts just before we go?
nope, just it was a pleasure to be here. I thank you for inviting me. I'd love to come back and talk about some other issues that deal with our community. Perhaps if we could talk about social justice for an entire period one time, I really would like to get into that, because we have a feeling that there's nothing we could do. I heard somebody say today, there's nothing we could do about that, and that hurt my heart, because we can and we must.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely going to put that down, so we can speak about. We definitely speak about that further. Um, And y'all, my highlight from today is when you basically talked about volunteering again and becoming a part of something. It's okay if you decide you want to go into business or you decide you want to do something. It don't look at how long it takes you to get there. Look at what you need to do to get there and to be able to stay there. So I think that's the most important part about things. Become a learned individual, know what you're doing, do your research, use data and information to like drive your thinking, and less of the emotional pull. And I'm saying that to you all as a person that also practices this. You all know I've mentioned that I am in the mental health field and like going through school and licensure. But even with that, I'm not going out directly into business myself. I'm interning with the organization that matches a business model and has a successful structure and systems and all of that in place that I desire. So make sure that you are connecting and aligning yourself in places that match you. Okay? And now where you go and you rob the concept, because we're not here to be thieves. We're here to help learn and build each other up. And in order to do that, that means you have to come in with the right mindset that you are there to be open minded and to learn. So that was my highlight from today. Maria, you got one?
Just keep on doing what you need to do to get where you got to go. Because ultimately, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you'll get there.
That right. That right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time. Again, my name is Christian Shields. I am your host. I am the founder of I am your host. I am the founder of My Secret's Purpose, and I also host the My Secret's Purpose conference. And I would like to just share with you all, until next time, my three C's are: one, connection. Always connect with yourself authentically, and commitment. Commitment to your own, balancing your own life, your own self care, and taking care of your own business. And last but not least, consistency at a pace that works for you. Tune in next Thursday for Ask Christian at 12:02 p.m. Peace out, y'all.